What's up, YouTube? Today I'm going to show you how to sharpen a chef's knife. This process is going to be common for any double bevel knife. That means that it's ground on both sides to have an included angle greater than the individual angle of either side. So if you grind this side, for example, to 15 degrees and the other side to 15 degrees, and it's an included 30 degrees. As opposed to a single bevel knife that's ground only on one side and the other side is flat. So this process is going to work for chef's knives, petty knives, utility knives, pretty much anything that's got two bevels, one on this side, one on that side, and that has a curve. Because flat knives are sharpened just slightly differently, where you don't have to sort of work this rocking maneuver. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my stone, and I could soak it in a tub or Tupperware or any sort of container. This is a splash and go stone, not a perma-soak stone, so it's not really necessary. So all I'm going to do is turn on some water, and if you'll see the first drips, if I just leave it on there, it starts to drink it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it run on it a little bit and make sure it gets on the whole stone, and just wait a little bit, see if it absorbs it. I just used the stone a little while ago, so it's pretty soaked already. And so as you can see, if I wipe it off, it still stays wet. So that means I'm ready to use it. If it's still drinking up the water, then just let some water sit on it for another while. And you can just leave it dripping until the point that it's not drinking up anymore and it's just sitting on the top. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a paper towel and I'm going to wet it. I like to use utility shop towels because they're a little more sturdy. They take a little bit more abuse without tearing. So all I gotta do is open it up and set it down where I'm gonna be doing my sharpening. Now that I've got my wet paper towel, shop towel in this case, I just wring it out a little bit, make sure it's still damp, set it down, and bring my stone over. And I'm going to keep just a little cup of water to keep it wet. And it won't be necessary to be cleaning the stone off repeatedly or anything like that. You're just going to want to make sure that it's wet. A lot of the buildup that you see on it isn't actually the metal from the knife. It's actually the abrasive from the stone being released. And that's actually what you want, because that's actually what does most of your cutting. So if you keep washing that off, it's going to take you a lot longer to sharpen your knife. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my knife down flat. And I'm going to lift it up from the spine until I see the cutting edge make contact. Because at first you'll see that it doesn't actually make contact. There's a little bit of space between the knife and the stone. And you're just going to pull it up using your fingers while keeping pressure down here at the heel until it does make contact. So as you can see here, there's a little bit of a shadow underneath the knife. That means it's not making contact yet, and as I start to roll it in this direction, you see right there, it's just about making contact. So that's the position I want to hold it at. If I ever am unsure if I'm keeping the right angle, I'm just going to put the knife flat on the stone again, and I'm going to start to rock it until I make sure that it makes contact, and just try to hold that angle while I'm sliding back and forth. So now that my stone is soaked, make sure it's got a little bit of water on the top, and I could find my angle by putting my thumb at the heel, fingers on the other edge of the stone. I'm not going to put them way out here off the stone. I'm going to keep them on the stone here. And I'm just going to pull in until I see that it makes contact, and I'm going to run back and forth, trying to keep that same angle. If I ever feel like I'm unsure, I just stop, lay it down again, and then pull up. And I want to try to use as much as I can, all of my stone, so that it wears evenly, and that way I don't get a big dish in it. And I just run back and forth. And now that I've done it here at this spot enough, I start to gradually slide my knife in this direction. So I'm sort of sliding towards the heel, so that the tip can eventually get onto the stone. And so I'm sliding up and down here, and I start to slide it over just little by little, while sort of keeping my thumb over here near the heel and keeping my fingers towards the left edge of the stone. And I'm not really applying a lot of pressure. I'm just using enough pressure that I'm controlling my knife because I don't want to just have my hand floating up here where it can easily slip off. And once I get here, right here, where you can see the tip of the knife is already on top of the stone. It's not making contact yet because I'm still focusing here with the heel pressure. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start rocking towards the tip as I'm going back and forth now that the tip is finally on the stone. So I run it back and forth, and if I need to make sure again, I lay it flat, I pull it up, there it is, and I start to put the tip down and then lift it back up. So I'm just rocking towards the tip and then away from the tip. And this is starting to make a little bit of noise, so I'll put a little more water on it. Once again, towards the tip, back to the middle, towards the tip, back to the middle, and then I'm going to work my way back now towards the heel. So now what could have happened while I was doing all of this is that I start to wear a flat spot in any particular section where I stayed on it for too long. So what I'm going to do for the last part of it is I'm going to put the tip down, and as I'm going from the south side to the north side of the stone, from here to here, I'm going to be feeding from the tip to the heel. Now this has a bolster. If you don't have a bolster on yours, you can run all the way through. It makes it a lot easier to sharpen. These bolstered knives are not quite as nice for that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tip down, I lay it down, I pull it up until I see it make contact, and then I rock towards the tip, and then I slide upward while feeding the knife and rocking it back onto the heel. So what this does is it will get rid of those flat spots if I've developed any. No, all I'm going to do is I'm going to do it to the left side. But the way that I know that I'm done with this side is I can feel a burr on the back side. So this whole time I've been sharpening this side, right? This edge over here. So I'm going to look at that edge, and then I'm going to run my fingers off of the knife from the flat spot all the way off. Like this. And I can feel a burr catching my finger. I can feel it catching my fingers. They don't just slide off without any resistance. I can feel it sort of scraping against my fingertips. So that's what I want. Once I can feel that, I know this side is done. As long as I can feel it all the way through the knife. And I do at the moment. So from here to there, I can feel it. If you feel one spot has it, like up here, and you touch that, you try to run your fingers off the knife down here and you don't feel it, that means this part of the knife still needs some work. So just focus on that and then work all the way through. So let's say, for example, I did need that. Say if this side already had developed a burr, but this side did not, I would focus on this lower region. Focus on it, and then still gradually move my way up, and then just don't spend so much time on the rest of it. But once you do feel that it's good, and there's a burr everywhere, when you run your fingers off of it in this direction, then you go back to the tip to heel. Put the tip down. And as I move upward, I start to feed it towards the left or the west so that my heel eventually makes contact at the end. Now that that's done, all I'm going to do is do it left-handed, which is going to be tricky because I'm right-handed. So it'll take a little bit of practice to really get this down. So now I'm doing it with my left hand, but I'm doing the exact same procedure. I'm going to put my thumb at the heel, I'm going to lift up until I see it make contact, and then I'm going to run it back and forth with my right hand fingers on the right edge of the stone. And if it's not wet enough, I'll put some water on it, but I think it's okay at the moment. And then I'm going to work my way from the heel gradually toward the tip. While again, making sure that as I move over, I start to move my fingers over so that they stay at the right edge of the stone. And again, when the tip is hovering over the stone, I rock towards the tip and away from the tip, towards the tip and away from the tip as I move back and forth. And then I work my way back to the heel. And I can work my way back this way, and then back to the heel. Once again, the side that I've sharpened is now this side, the left side of the knife. That was the side that I placed down. So I'm going to look at the left side of the knife, and I'm going to run my fingers off the edge from the back side. And if I feel a burr all the way from tip to heel, which I currently do, that means this is done. So let me finish off with the tip to heel maneuver. So I place it down, I rock it, pull up on the spine so that I can see it make contact with the edge, and then I rock towards the tip, and as I move upward, feed the heel in. Again, the purpose of this is to remove any flat spots. And those will become pretty evident once we switch to the 6000 side. If you start to work on the 6000 side and then you see that some spots are very polished and other parts are not, you're going to know that that's where you have flat spots. Okay, so now that I'm done with that side, I switch to my 6000 side. Alright. So this stone just happens to be a 1000, 6000, but if it's a 1000, 3000, really that's fine. Honestly, most of your sharpening comes from your 1000. This polishes it and then just gives it a little bit of a finer edge, but the 1000 keeps it plenty sharp for most people's purposes. It just depends on how super sharp you need your knife to be. So now I'm not going to do the back and forth motion on the fine side. What I'm going to do is only tip to heel. And I try to start all the way down here at the bottom and work my way all the way up to the top. And if you start to hear a little bit of noise, just put some more water on it. So now there should be a clear difference in the way that both sides look. One side so far has only been worked on with the 1000 side, and the other side has been worked on with the 6000. So let's take a look. So what you should be able to see now that you've done one side with the fine is that the polish on this side is different from the polish on this side, where this one looks very dull. Dull, I mean in sheen, not by sharpness. And this side will have an almost near finish if you're using a 6000 stone. A 3000 looks pretty good too. and higher than that looks even better. But you'll see one side looks like it doesn't have much of a reflection, while the other side is almost a mirror. Okay, so now that you've done it right-handed, if you started right-handed like me, then you'll move on to doing it left-handed after you feel a burr. So if I can feel a burr after using my fine side, and the burr won't be as big as it was with the 1000 side, and so it may be a little bit harder to feel. And if you're unsure, just give it a few more passes, and then feel for it. And it should be very slight, but noticeable. So now I can feel it all the way across, and I'm going to move on to left-handed. And again, I'm just going to start by laying it flat, rocking it over, lifting up until it touches, and then I rock it over until the tip makes contact, and I move upward and to the right now. And if it starts to get a little noisy like that, just put a little extra water in it. And you're not really doing a whole lot of pressure, you're just controlling the knife. And you'll continue to do this until you feel a burr on the opposite side. I can feel it starting to build. It's pretty good up here. Right here it's missing a little bit, and right there. So I'll just do it a few more passes. Hopefully I'll get it all the way through. Okay, now it's good. So now that it's got a burr on that backside, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it 5 passes. And you can do any number you want. You can start at 10 and then move your way down. But I'm going to do just 5 with essentially no pressure. I'm just guiding the knife with this side, but I'm not pressing down on it at all. And I'm doing the same motion, but I'm trying to make sure that I don't put any pressure on the knife. And then I'm going to switch to the left-hand side, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. 5 passes, no pressure. And then I'm going to move back to this side. I'm going to do 3 now. Again, no pressure. Other side, 3, no pressure. I'm going to do 2. Now I'm going to do 1. Now, you shouldn't really feel a burr on either side of it. If you do, then work it out. I feel a little bit right here. So I guess, again, I'm going to pass on this side with no pressure. And now it's all gone. Alright, so now we're pretty much done. And now that I've finished sharpening both sides and I've gotten rid of my burr, all I'm going to do is take my cutting board, my wood cutting board. You can do this really with any piece of wood. And I'm going to be at the end grain here. I'm not going to go along the edge where I'm trying to cut the fibers. It's sort of like what would be like a rip cut. And I'm just going to drag my knife through it. And the reason I'm doing it on this end instead of on the side is that over here it's gonna end up working the knife. The knife's gonna be trying to cut through something, which is actually dulling the knife. But here, since I'm doing it at the end, it's pretty much just splitting the fibers without really needing to do any cutting at all. And all this is gonna do is clean up a little bit of the edge if there's a little bit of a burr stuck on there. That's just kind of like a piece of foil hanging on for dear life. And it gets quieter and quieter the more you run through it, and then you'll see that it stops making noise at all. And then you're pretty much done, and you can hear and feel as you drag your fingers across the edge, not down the edge, but across the edge. You start to hear it, and you can really feel it grabbing onto every bit of your finger. Now the last thing that I can visually check is I take a look at the reflection on the edge. So it should reflect light, and if you keep rolling it past, it should stop reflecting light completely. You shouldn't see any reflection past that certain point, and it should be no reflection at all until you get to the other side and it starts reflecting on that side. So to give you an idea, here is a flat spot where my bolster is. And as you can see, if I make the reflection appear on the face, as I roll it over, I see a reflection here. That indicates that I have a flat spot. Of course, it's a really severe flat spot because it's a bolster. But if I can see that anywhere along my edge, that means that I've got a dull spot. And one thing you'll see in a lot of people's households is that this part of the knife gets worn down a lot. It's a very common use spot. And so you'll end up seeing, you're trying to sharpen the whole knife, the rest of the knife is super sharp, and then you'll see in the most commonly used areas, if they don't use the whole knife, that you'll roll the reflection off, and then you'll still see reflected light on the edge. Of course, here we've got none of that, which means we're good. And you can see that inspected all the way down the knife, and there's essentially nothing. So one last thing I'm going to mention is that your angle isn't super important, or at least you're not ruining your knife by going with a different angle. What happens is, if I use a lower angle, which is going to be closer to the knife being flat, if I only pick it up a little bit, then that's going to give me a sharper edge overall. The issue is that if the metal of the knife is not strong enough to retain that edge, it'll wear out really fast and feel dull quickly. So if that occurs, all you're going to do is, instead of having it closer to flat, you're going to have it closer to standing. And you don't have to do it really dramatically. Of course, I'm doing it from like here to here, which is a big difference, but you don't need to do quite that much. So if you find that your knife is getting dull really fast, hold it up to where it makes contact, and then just pick it up a hair more, and then try that. Do it on the other side as well. And then what you're going to have is, instead of having a really, really narrow angle like this, it'll be a little bit larger. And so it'll give you a little more metal behind your edge, and that edge will last a little bit longer. The problem is, it's not going to be as sharp, but a metal can only take so much. If it's strong enough, you can really sharpen it, really, really sharp, without it wearing too fast. But if the metal is a little bit softer, it's not going to be able to hold that edge, and so what you're going to want to do is go with a higher angle so that it'll last longer. Even though it's not quite as sharp, what you want is a knife that's sharp enough for long enough. If it's really sharp but doesn't last, it's not really all that great. And if it lasts really long, the sharpness that you get after sharpening it lasts very long, but it's not sharp enough for what you need, then you need to go with a lower angle. And if your knife just isn't doing it, you've tried everything, you've tried a low angle, you've tried a high angle, and you just feel like the durability, the edge retention of your knife is not enough, and so you keep having to go with a high angle, but that's not the sharpness that you need it to be sharper, then you need to go with a harder knife. This is a Mercer Genesis 8-inch chef's knife, and this is a 56 Rockwell hardness knife, which is pretty good. It's not the hardest thing you can get. Of course, you can get like a Shun or a Miyabi or something, and it'd be quite a lot harder than this, which means you can get a whole lot sharper edge on it. And then depending on what type of metal you're using, because Mercer's not really known for making super hard knives, but at the same time, this is it says high carbon stainless, German steel, X50, chrome, molybdenum, vanadium 15. So this particular metal, you'll see it all around in a bunch of different manufacturers, and it's pretty good. But, of course, there are harder metals out there. They take longer to sharpen, but they hold an edge a lot longer, but they're also more expensive. Anyway, try it out, see what works for you, and see what stones you like. This is a King KDS 1000, 6000. They also have a KW65, which is a little bit cheaper. It's also a little bit smaller, though. This one, you get a whole lot of 1000 with it. The KW65 is just a little bit thinner. And I would say they're pretty close in terms of performance, what you get for your knife, but the KW65 does wear a little bit faster. And you can really get like if you get a Naniwa Chaucera, or really any of the Naniwas, or any of the Kings, or anything from Sharpen, which is going to be quite a bit more expensive usually, it's going to be not bad. And if you really don't have anything to sharpen with, go find a brick. And you'd be surprised at how good a brick will do. So, hope you like this video. Let me know what you guys are doing and what you like for your stones and your angles and your knives. Alright, see you guys later.